All right, so one thing I want to talk to you guys today about is the concept of being skinny fat. So, a lot of people in today's world, I say, particularly males, are going to be more biased to be skinny fat, more so than anything else. So, we're going to talk about what it actually is and how do you go about fixing it. So, first off, let's talk about what does skinny fat actually mean. So, skinny fat is a term that describes someone who appears thin, normal weight, right? If they have on a t-shirt, they don't really look fat; they just look normal, right? But on the inside, they have a pretty high percent of body fat with very little muscle tissue at all. So the scale might look fine; they might look like a normal human being, clothes on, they look good, right? But if you see them in a bathing suit, not um, something out of the ordinary from like a daily life activity, the mirror difficult surely tells a different story. They're soft, they're undefined, they have no real shape to them at all. They just look skinny with a belly, essentially. And here's kind of a good example of like what a skinny fat individual person might look like, right? Whereas like a more muscular person, very small amount of body fat on the stomach, big upper defined chest, right? Big arms, big chest, traps, arms, nice legs, right? Small waist. But if you look in comparison to the skinny fat individual, they have a pretty good amount of fat on their stomach, abdomen. Not really have a definite shape to them at all. Again, this is a normal weight, high body fat percentage person, and this is in comparison to someone who is lean, defined, a muscular individual. So I think the next thing we need to talk about is why does it actually happen? So typically this happens for a couple reasons. The main one is going to be you're you're just eating in a deficit without lifting at all. Um, you know, you did end up losing weight, but that was mostly muscle mass in the first place. And then another big one is just having a very sedentary lifestyle. Fat accumulates even at you having a quote unquote normal weight. This could be something like, you played high school sports, all the way up until you graduated. You were a very athletic individual, and then you graduated, high school, college, whatever, and then you got a desk job, right? You went from being pretty active to now living a very sedentary lifestyle. No weight, lifting involved at all. You're essentially just sitting at a desk 8, 10 hours a day. Um, your activity level has went down a ton. Now, another reason is you may, be training to a degree, but it's more or less just cardio only training. There's no resistance work at all to help you build and maintain the muscle that you have. And then another one is just is genetics, hormonal issues as well too can cause that fat distribution to go to places to where it's not very favorable, such as your stomach, love handles, things of that nature, to give you more of that skinny fat look. Now, if we look at, let's say, a 165-pound person, right? The scale says that's normal, right, for average population. But if we look at, their body fat is higher than their muscle, 32% body fat, 28% muscle, bone and water mass is 40%. Like a good bit of their body is body fat, right? Whereas only a quarter of their body is muscle mass, right? So again, like we can see to where like the fat distribution is higher than the muscle mass, and it's just causing that skinny fat look to be even more pronounced. And so if we think about like, okay, yes, you're skinny fat, you obviously are a very skinny individual, but you just have a lot of body fat on you. Like typically it's, I can picture an individual in my mind now that I know personally from high school, just skinny arms, skinny legs, very little to no muscle definition at all, but has like a beer gut. That's what I envision when I think of skinny fat, right? But we also have to keep in mind that it's not just an aesthetic problem. It's not just a vanity issue that they're having. Low muscle mass paired with a high body fat percentage is a metabolic issue. It just is what it is. If you have less muscle mass, that means that you're going to have a slower metabolism, poor, worse, sorry, poor insulin sensitivity, and then in turn, you're going to have a body that holds on to body fat just more easily. So again, you can be thin, tiny, whatever that you want to call yourself on paper, Even if we're not even talking about, being, skinny fat, you can be a thin individual on paper and you still can be metabolically unhealthy. This is honestly why the scale is one of the worst metrics to use when we're looking at progress. It is a tool that you can use, but it's not the end all be all. So again, if we look at, an individual who has low muscle mass, all of these things can stem from having low muscle mass, a slow metabolism, poor insulin sensitivity, more fat storage. And then again, this all ties back into, it's just going to be harder to lose that body fat. And then it's going to be even easier to gain it back if you do happen to lose the body fat. So the cycle just kind of feeds into itself, right? Until you break it with a resistance training. So that's how we jump into how do you actually fix it. So the initial thing that you should do is get into the gym, and get into the gym as in lifting weights. We're not really going to be focused on cardio here. You need to prioritize your resistance training above all else. You need to actually build the muscle that you're missing from your frame. Now, as far as how food goes, a lot of people think, all right, well, I got a lot of body fat on me. I need to go ahead and hop into a deficit. That's not what you should do at all. That's going to make things harder for you. You should eat at or near maintenance, while incorporating that resistance training. Body comp is gonna happen here. This is, typically what happens. I mean, if you go from an individual who, has never trained in their life, eating at a maintenance, and then you have a person who does this for, 3 to 6 months, eating the same amount of food, but now they also lift weights as well too. You're gonna have a pretty big body, composition shift happen here. And then, for sure, if we're eating toward, that maintenance calories, your protein has to be, around that, 1 gram per pound of body weight. And if you're on the lower side and you haven't eaten a ton of protein in your life, start out at 0.7 and work your way up to that 1 gram per pound of body weight. And one thing that you should obviously do, I mean, you guys know me, I'm a big stickler about keeping data, keeping your metrics where you can look, back upon, track your strength in the gym, keep you a logbook, keep your measurements, specifically if you are indeed holding a lot of that skinny fatness, right? That skinny fatness, I guess that's the word, around your stomach, obviously keep those measurements so you can actually see, those physical numbers going down, along with taking pictures as well too. Pictures are a great tool that a lot of people just don't like to take because they hate the way that their body looks. But I mean, if you're just keeping it in between you and your coach, what does it matter, right? Now, if we, look at like what this recomp process might actually look like. Now, the first month or two, this is more or less like, neurological gains. You're learning the actual movement patterns that you're going to be doing in the gym. The scale's probably not going to move a whole lot. I mean, it can fluctuate for sure, but that weekly average will probably stay about the same, and you'll see that your progress in the gym will skyrocket to a degree. I mean, if you've never lifted a weight before in your life and you're 200 pounds and you put, I don't know, 25 pounds on each side of the bar and you bench press it, right? Well, probably after the first month, that is going to go way up, right? Like you're just getting those neurological gains from never doing the movement. And once you've done them for a few weeks, your body is going to kind of, catch up toward that you should be in comparison, with your weight and how, quickly that you're progressing in the gym, getting those movements down. Month 3 to 4, I mean, you're going to start to see those visible changes coming in. More so like how your clothes are fitting. That's definitely a good metric there. And then month 5 and 6, that body composition is going to actually be able to be seen. A pretty drastic difference if you take day 1 pictures and compare it to month 5 pictures. They'll probably be pretty drastically different there. And then by month 6, so you should probably have a pretty, undeniable transformation there. At that time, if you're, kind of happy with how things have progressed, you should probably continue to, put on muscle mass, or if you're happy with that aspect, then you could continue to, shred down and get leaner if that's what you wish to do. But let's talk about what keeps people stuck. So if you're in that cycle of, if you're skinny fat and you're trying to get out of that cycle, and you're wanting to, make a change, people always, revert back to again, I need to eat less. I need to do more cardio. I'm overly hyped about the scale, and I expect this to be a fast process, right? Well, all of these are completely wrong, right? If we cut calories, and you're a skinny fat individual, it's just going to make it worse. It just is what it is. I mean, your body is, obviously so adapted to where it's at now, and if you pull calories out, you're probably just going to start eating away, whatever muscle that you do have. So again, you need to eat at maintenance, make sure that your protein is high enough. Doing, more cardio, again, that's just putting you in a steeper of a, calorie deficit. You need to be eating, um, at maintenance for the most part. And then if you do more cardio, that's, again, just going to drive that energy expenditure up more and more as well. You should just try to lift weights at least 3 to 5 times a week. I mean, cardio is good, especially for heart health. But in the beginning, I would honestly just focus on a step count and then, hit the weights during the week. Do not chase the scale. Obviously track your strength, track your measurements, track your pictures, things of that nature as well too. And then, another thing that you guys, obviously know this, like it is a process. You're not going to go from skinny fat to having it looks like a keg on the front of your stomach, right, to a six pack in 6 weeks. Like it's just not how that stuff goes. I mean, it does take time to get there, but if you just trust the process and you actually do it the right way, that 6 to 12 month window will fly by and you won't be able to notice yourself, after that time frame is up. So, the biggest thing with the skinny fat issue is a lot of people, again, they like to, hop on the train. They get things going and then they see the scale not going in the direction that they want it to go. Um, Skinny fat is a body composition problem. We're really not worried about the weight in this aspect. The main takeaway is that you need to actually build the muscle that you need to be building, and then once you build some muscle, and then you can focus on losing body fat. And then again, if you think about it, if you build more muscle, you're going to have a higher metabolism, which will then enable you to eat more food, which will then enable you to have, I don't want to say an easier cutting phase, but you'll have more food at play to make that cutting phase um, a little easier as compared to, if the food was lower with less muscle tissue, right? So again, just make sure that you're, prioritizing, lifting weights and, not really too concerned about what the scale says. Build the muscle mass first, and that'll be the biggest takeaway from the whole lesson there. So, anybody got any questions with that? Anybody know of anybody that has been skinny fat and had a successful transformation? Anything at all that you want to add to any of that?
I mean, I can speak from personal experience. Like, I went through weight loss when I got out of high school and then was struggling to maintain, like, just being skinny pretty much. I didn't resistance train, I didn't work out. The gym was to me like the scariest place in the world. And I was like skinny fat for years, just eating like a bird.
Yep.
I was like, I can't eat anything. And then I read something that was similar to what you were saying about if you have more muscle, your metabolism is higher, you can eat more, your body shape is better, all of that. And that's actually like what got me in the gym. And it just completely changed everything. Like I eat way more than I ever did then and have a better shape and probably weigh about the same as I did when I looked heavier and was just like kind of soft per se. So
Yeah.